Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining this Laudato Si dialogue in the plight of environmental defenders around the world. My name is Jonathan Braden with the Global Catholic Climate Movement, and it's a pleasure to be joined for this special conversation by Father Xavier Jejeraj, the director of the Jesuit Social Justice and Ecology Secretary in Rome, and Melvin Perzuelo of the Philippine Miserior Partnership. Good morning, Father Xavier. Or good afternoon, Father
Good
Xavier. Good
afternoon.
evening, Melvin. Thank you both.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Father Xavier and Melvin will each talk about cases of environmental defenders near to their hearts in a little bit. But first, we want to back up and talk about what is an environmental defender. Last month, the National Catholic Reporter dove into the topic and talked about, there we go, and defined and talked about what is an environmental defender. With the headline here, you see environment defenders face dual threat of climate change and murder around the world. They talked about how in much of the world, defending the environment for some people can be a matter of life and death, and how further defining it, talking about how indigenous people, traditional communities, small farmers, and others depend on healthy ecosystems for their own life and their livelihoods, but they often have to risk their lives when they defend their land against incursions from companies, loggers, illegal miners, and organized crime groups growing drug crops. Sadly, the story continued actually, and talking about how local communities are not vulnerable only to ferocious national disasters and the climate crisis, but also abuse from governments and corporations, which we will get into in a little bit with Father Xavier and Melvin. And unfortunately, sadly, it has never been worse for environmental defenders. In 2019, according to the Global Witness's Defending Tomorrow report, 212 environmental defenders were killed in 2019, the highest number yet to have been murdered in a single year. As you see, an average of more than four people a week. And more than half of all of the reported killings took place in only two countries, Colombia and the Philippines, which Melvin will talk about in a little bit. Fourth on the list was Honduras, and fifth was Guatemala. And now during Laudato Si Lent, the Global Catholic Climate Movement has been remembering environmental defenders. Earlier during the Lenten season, we remembered Berta Cáceres of Honduras. And among the other environmental defenders, we also remembered Walter Mendez Barrios of Guatemala. And unfortunately, it's not only local people who have been persecuted for defending creation, and standing up for Indigenous people. We've also seen religious officials, of course, Father Stan Swami of India, who became the oldest person to be arrested for terrorism in India. And Father Xavier, you know Father Stan well, of course. What can you bring us up to date with what has happened and your relationship with him?
Thank you, Jonathan, for introducing about Father Stan Swami. I know him well for almost 30 years, ever since I became a Jesuit almost, and started working with the indigenous people in central India. I would prefer to show the video first of him speaking to us before he was arrested. He is 83 years old, as you mentioned, and he has a Parkinson's disease, and he cannot hear without the hearing aid. And a man who has worked for 50 years with the indigenous people, defending their rights, especially the environmental rights of the indigenous people in central India. So we will listen to him probably. This was taken 2 days before he was arrested on October 8th last year, 2020. Listen.
By saying in the context in which I am, right now NIA is interrogating me. They have done 15 hours of interrogation, and still they want me to go to Bombay, which I am saying I will not go to Bombay for reasons that I will explain later. Now, a little background about my being and active and in Jharkhand is in the context of Jharkhand becoming a separate state. And so everybody wanted it, but then the issues were there. The issues were especially displacement, land alienation because of mining, factories, townships, dams, and people were not taken into confidence. Hardly only minimal compensation was being paid to them. So we took it as a challenge and say how young people can take this as a life issue and fight it out. So in this process, some very helpful rulings or laws were passed by the Indian Parliament, and particularly one PESA Act, which gives significant powers to the Gram Sabha, whatever happens in the village, for it to be consulted and to get its consent. The other is the Land Acquisition Act, which for the first time recognizes the need to get the consent of the people, of the landowners, and a fair compensation to them. So this kind of opened the way for us, and people started to claim their rights. But as they claimed, they were just being thrown into jail. So in 2017, I gave a call to whoever I knew, not only in Jharkhand, but in all the central tribal states of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, and Bengal. So we came together, we have formed a body called Persecuted Prisoner Solidarity Committee. And through that, we had planned to take up, first to do a study of the nature of under trial prisoners in all these states, and then to have recourse to legal action so that justice can be done. In this process,
I will forward
I
that a
have
little
filed
bit.
is the epidemic which is ravaging the country. And the Jharkhand government itself has given directions that elderly people may not travel or appear in public. Even these, I don't want to risk myself. And on the other hand, I am ready for further interrogation if NIA would want it, but through video conference. This is something that I am communicating to them, and let us hope that some human sense will prevail. And if it does not, I am ready, and I hope all of us, all those who know me and who are concerned about me, will also be ready to face what is to be faced. I just want to end by saying, what is happening to me is not something unique happening to me alone. It's a broader process that is taking place all over the country. We are all aware how prominent intellectuals, lawyers, writers, poets, activists, student leaders, they are all put in jail just because they have expressed their dissent or raised questions about the ruling powers of the India. So we are part of the process. As such, in a way, I am happy to be part of this process because I'm not a silent spectator, but I am part of it, part of the game, and ready to pay the price, whatever be it. Thank you for your attention.
I'm ready to pay the price, whatever be. I'm not a silent spectator. This has been the words of the stand we just heard. And this is exactly what Pope Francis mentions in his Fratelli Tutti as well. In point number 17, he says, often the voices raised in defense of the environment are silenced or ridiculed, using apparently reasonable arguments that are merely a screen for special interests. And that is what is happening to Father Stan Swami. As he mentions, it's not only he, but hundreds of others, as Jonathan was showing initially, whether be it in Honduras or Colombia or Philippines or all over the world, in Africa and many countries. It's basically the resources that have been protected and preserved by the indigenous people. The multinational corporations want to take them for profit, and so they find the place where Father Stan Swami has been living is in Jharkhand state, central India, is a state where majority are the indigenous people who have been protecting the land, forest, and the water. And Father Stan Swami has been for more than 40, 50 years. He has been there working, as he mentioned, defending the rights of these people, helping them to protect themselves.
Very well. Thank you, Father Xavier. And Melvin, to turn to you, you've seen some of the same type of persecution and and much worse than persecution.
One of the prisoners of solidarity.
Oh, we got him back.
Am I seeing?
Yeah, go ahead, Father Xavier.
Sorry. Yeah. This is more than 3,000 indigenous people, young people, were arrested and they were in the jail because the government said that these young people, the indigenous people, were defending the leaders of this community, defending the rights of the land, water, and forest. And they accused them of speaking against the country's interest and they were kind of traitors, anti-nationals, and wanting to eliminate the powers inside. So therefore, anti-national laws were enacted and they were put in the jail for months. And in his book, he found that there was more than 3,000 people were in the jail, and he spoke in favor of them, filed a case against the state, and which has become a thorn in the flesh of the people. And now he was arrested on 8th of October, and from then on he is in the prison with all his ailments. In another video, if you I can share the places where the videos are available. He is in a small cell with others. He cannot hold the glass. There was a problem even for him to have his sipper glass, because of Parkinson's, the hand will shake, everything will spill out. So for that, he was asking the jail authorities, almost it took more than 2 months to give him a sipper glass. And he cannot hear. And he was not allowed to have the bed. He was sleeping on the floor. And then he was given, after much demand, he was given. And somebody else had to help him to have his meal. So he is now, even now, he is in the prison. From October 8th, 9 days, he is there. And last week, 10 days ago, the investigating agency went to the place where he was and ransacked the entire place, took away a lot of documents saying that they have incriminating evidences against for the Stan and for doing anti-national activities. And now 11th was supposed to be the order given by the judge for his bail, was not given, and he is still in the jail. And others are being questioned for 6 days. 4 or 5 of them were every day, 10 hours, 12 hours, questioned against and trying to prove that he was. For the Stan, I moved the video. He says that some incriminating evidences were planted in his computer, which is a fact. There are another 15 other people were also accused of the same on the case, where there was a violence in a place and where all of them were involved in. For the Stan has never been in that place where the violence took place, but they are accusing him that he was instigating violence, and he is in the prison. And the planting of evidence has been proved by an American agency which has done the test of the hard disk of another person called Rona Wilson, and show that more than 40 places they have put, using the malware, they have planted certain files and say that this was in his computer. And this is exactly the same thing they have done for the Stan's computer, and now they don't have enough evidences to prove, and so they are bringing in evidences every now and then when there is supposed to be bail. They are not granting him. 83-year-old man suffering from Parkinson's, cannot hold a glass, cannot have on his own his meal, cannot use an Indian type of a toilet, squatting toilet, and cannot sleep on the floor. And he is persecuted literally inside the jail. And he gets the support of other companions for him to have his meal. And initially, they did not allow him to use his warm clothes even. And during winter. And that was in November, December time. And this is how, not only he, I have other videos which I'm not showing, but I can share with you. There are more than 300 people or more than are in the jail being accused of anti-national activities, sedition, and trying to kill the Prime Minister Modi, which is only accusation.
Yeah.
But the court is also not giving in, because the law is such that anti-national law, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, is very stringent in the law is this. Just last, I will finish with that, and afterwards we can move. Every law, the human rights, is that anybody who is accused of, he is innocent until proven guilty. That's the norm legally. But in this law, the accused will have to prove to the court that he is innocent. He is guilty until he proves that he is innocent. This is just the opposite. Cannot be accepted in the UN as well. This is the way the law has been enacted and has been putting a lot of people who are defending the rights of the indigenous people, defending the rights of the environment.
Yeah,
So this is where it is very, very terrifying, frightening. They want to tell anyone who speaks against the state is anti-national.
Yeah, and it sounds. Thank you, Father Xavier.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And Melvin, that sounds. Hearing that, a lot of that had to sound fairly familiar. I'm guessing coming from and being in the Philippines and working with indigenous peoples there. What have you seen, and what are you seeing there?
Yes, it is very sad that this is now the norm, no? That environmental workers are threatened. Here in the Philippines, particularly in our island of Panay Island, our bishops, together with the bishops of the islands of Negros and Romblon, came out with a pastoral letter, asking for an investigation on the killings of 9 indigenous peoples leaders, IP leaders. They were killed on December 30 in the very early morning, early hours of December 30, when the police and the army served search warrants against these indigenous people in Tapas, Capiz. And aftermath was 9 IP leaders were killed and 16 were arrested. So if to give a background where our place is, maybe we can show the map of the Philippines and Panay Island, so that we can have an idea. No, the first map. This is Panay Island. This is in the center of the Philippine archipelago. So it is one of the more than 7,000 islands of the archipelago. And this is generally the areas where the indigenous communities live. They are called Bukidnon, or people of the mountains. And I became acquainted with these communities in the early 1990s, when we organized a group, the Green Forum Western Visayas, in preparation for the Earth Summit by 1992. So we were campaigning on biodiversity conservation and sustainable development, because in the center of this island, near or overlapping the IP communities, are the remaining forests of the Visayan geographical region. So it is very rich in biological diversity. And in the 1990s, we were still after college, we visited the place, telling them that we would like to teach the community, because we were very, very arrogant that time, no, with our fresh from college. But an IP leader approached me and said that when he was still a young boy, the whole plains of the island was also covered with forests. So we are now going to their community to teach them on how to protect the forest. So he asked, how can the sun from the lowland come here in the mountains where the remaining forests are, to teach us to protect the forest, when your fathers and your forefathers were not able to protect your own forest. Because when I was a young boy, those plains were also covered with forest, but your agricultural practices, you were every year you were uh, clearing forest, patches of forest, until you have no more forest. And now you would come here to teach us how to defend or how to protect this forest. So we changed our approach. We realized that we, from the lowland, should not go there to teach them, but rather to learn from them on how they can live within the forest, because almost all of their needs are coming from the forest. Their shelter, their clothing, their medicines, even the transportation. They can just make a raft and go by the river to go downstream. So it was a profound realization for us, for our group, that we have to learn much from these people. So, and from that, in the 1990s, we were also we were able to collaborate with them in because in 1995 there was a Philippine Mining Act. No? So if we can show that this is the yellow ones. These are the mining applications all over the island, and the darker portion within the ancestral domains of the indigenous communities is a military reservation. That is a 33,000 hectares declared as a military reservation. So practically, the indigenous communities are not tenured. They do not have a tenurial rights to their land. Even if there was a law in 1997, the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, that was supposedly enacted to recognize the rights of the indigenous communities. Practically, these were not recognized on the ground. So, and what the communities did in the 1990s was to lobby. They have to go to the provincial governments of Iloilo, Capiz, Aklan, and Antique. They built a three-dimensional map, a relief map made to scale. We assisted them with our participatory GIS, and then they brought the map to the provincial capitals, and then they explained to the provincial councils what would be the impact if these areas would be mined out, no, and the impact to our water systems and to our environmental conditions. And it was a blessing that the provincial government of Iloilo, Capiz, and Aklan decided to declare a moratorium on large-scale mining operations in the provinces. So it was really a victory of the indigenous communities to be able to convince the provincial governments that this area should not be mined, because this will give a very grave impact on the ecosystems of our place. And then lately, about 10 years ago, please, with the other map, no, the ones with the, yes, this is the areas in Capiz where there are pending for Panay River. There are two dams that are now the Halaor mega dam is now under construction. It is worth uh, 230 million US dollars. No, and it will submerge more than 1,400 hectares of the ancestral domain of these communities. While Panay River, there is another proposed dam which is worth around 470 million US dollars and will submerge more than 2,300 hectares of the ancestral domains. And these are the communities that will be gravely affected. No? And these are also the villages that will serve the search warrants in the very early morning of December 30, where 3 elders of Lahog were killed, one in Acuña, and one in Aglinab, one in Takayan, and one in the Ansur. And the others, they were arrested, no? 16 people, 16 leaders of their organization, the Tumandok, were arrested in these areas. So it is very sad that the communities who are trying to protect the ecosystems of our not only of the mountain areas but also of the lowland, because this will affect the whole island ecosystems, but they are harassed and subjected to this kind of atrocities.
Thank you, Melvin. And in both situations, of course, we see similar. We see people trying to stand up. In the case of what you were sharing, Melvin, Indigenous people trying to stand up for creation. And what you were saying, Father Xavier, Father Stan trying to work with Indigenous people. So strong similarities. We'll start with you, Father Xavier, because I know you have to run shortly. What have you and the Jesuits tried to do for Father Stan, and what has worked, or what ideas can different people try to do just to give people a sense of what they can do to educate and take action with you all?
Yes, from the day he was arrested, we knew even before that he was interrogated for more than 15 hours in the place where he was living. But the day he was arrested, from then on, there has been a big campaign all over the country, not merely in the state where he was, but also internationally. The Society of Jesus has been with him in solidarity with Father Stan, and the campaign, as I put in the link that I shared already, is Stand with the Stan. JCSA Web is the website which has been specially created to show the solidarity of the Society of Jesus and all over the world. Even you will see there are the videos, the Mary Lawler, who is the UN, the rapporteur for human rights, has given a very clear letter to the government, Indian government, asking them to respond, especially on Stan Swami. And more than 100 different articles have been shared in international level. We have regular meetings to kind of tell the government, but government as well, the judiciary is silent on these things. There has been enormous number of evidences produced to stand with the Stan. You will see the posters, campaigns, postcard campaigns, video messages all over the country. But yet, still, when you speak in defense of the rights of the indigenous or people, you become a thorn in the flesh of the state. And that they don't want to hear. They don't want anybody working with the indigenous people. This is the clear message that they are giving. If you want to stand with the people, you are an anti-national.
You become associated strongly with them. Yeah.
Yes, and also they say that you are a Maoist. Father Stan is accused of being conniving with the extremist groups, the Maoists, to overthrow the government. And this is the way they are creating fear in the minds of anybody who is wanting to work for defending the rights of the indigenous people or the Dalits or the farmers even, they are accused of. This law has been created to make sure that nobody speaks in favor of the poor or the vulnerable, and also the vulnerable environment.
And Melvin, what have you seen that you all have attempted to stand up for indigenous peoples, and what has been the varying degrees of success?
What Father Xavier said was very true. No? There is really the state is really doing everything to to cower, to silence not only the indigenous communities but even the support groups. Anybody who give them support will be called communist, terrorist, and you can be even the lawyer of the Tumandok. He was attacked here near our community, just a block away from where I am now. The lawyer was attacked near the police station of the city. So this is really frightening. No, they are really trying to silence everybody to make us afraid. No, they are threatening us. I am afraid now that at any time if they can do that to the lawyer, who am I? Not if they will really do that kind of atrocities. So we just pray, and then we try to provide support. Like now, the families, they are scared. There are depression with especially the spouses of those who were killed. And we are trying to provide them a link with the psychiatrist and psychosocial services, and provide them with now their basic need is food, because they cannot go to their fallow areas. What their agricultural practices is very diversified but low intensity. So they have to go to the forest to get their food. And they cannot do that now because there are armed people in their farms. They cannot just go to their farm to harvest or to get some products that they can sell downstream. So it's really very, very hard now. And we would ask the church leaders if we can do as Laudato Si is calling for unity, no, and the appreciation of the spirituality of these communities, because they really are one with they really appreciate that spirituality of creation, although they may not call it like that, but it is in their life, it is in their worldview. So if we can ask the help of church leaders, ecumenical groups that can help these communities. We have to give them the voice because they are now isolated and they are scared.
Hmm. Devastating. Thank you, Melvin.
Just
go ahead.
one word. Father Stan, while he was in the jail, he wrote a poem, which you can see. He says that a caged bird can still sing. That hope is kept alive. Even if we are accused of we can still sing and bring joy to the people. That's some message that he gives us.
Mm-hmm. A caged bird can still sing, indeed. And it sounds like, so for people at home watching or who watch on YouTube, to raise awareness, to keep talking about these individuals, these communities that have been persecuted, have been murdered by governments and corporations. What else can people do to bring attention to these atrocities?
Yeah, one thing they can do is also to tell their respective governments as well, the embassies of these governments, whether it is the Philippines or Honduras or Colombia, also to tell this is what's happening. If you have connections with the educational institutions, you can tell the children that the future is in your hand. If you have to stand to protect the environment, and if you don't protect the environment, which means people who are standing for environment, you have to defend them as well. We need to educate and share these kind of a common consciousness in the younger people. Thirdly, even with our own corporates, the companies that are taking away the mine, how the mines are damaging the environment. the dams, environment. This is a kind of another way of making the business people, corporates, to understand that what they are doing is a harm not only to the entire cosmos and the universe, but also to each one of us and the future of our children. This is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree with Father Xavier. Especially that the dam here, the Halaor Dam, is funded by the Korean Export and Import Bank. If we can do our advocacies also to the Korean side, no, and they are also planning to extend that to Panay, the Panay Dam. They are still finishing the feasibility study of the Panay Dam. If we can campaign not only here in the Philippines, but also to those who fund this development aggression, these projects that could cause tremendous impact to the host communities.
Mm-hmm.
The last one also with divestment, our investment. Many of our people invest on these companies. Can we be a little more careful with whom we are investing? We need to divest from these fossil fuel and other companies that are destroying the environment. This is a possible way of doing individually as well as collectively. Besides praying for these people, praying for the indigenous, that's one, but also doing a little bit in each of our part. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Father Xavier. And Melvin, and why do we think it is on the rise? Why, like we talked about earlier, and you're seeing in both situations, these are obviously recent and ongoing. Why are we seeing more and more environmental defenders being persecuted and attacked all over the globe?
I find there is a tremendous amount of nexus between the corporates, banks, and the state power, who are interested mainly in the profit. Profit, and more profit.
And then it just keeps going and going and going, kind of.
Yes, exactly. When you start accumulating wealth only for yourself, and you become mad, crazy, and never bother about the environment or the future or they are interested only in, and the powers that are the political powers, they help one another. The corporates help the political parties in their campaigns for political power, and these people make laws in order to favor the rich and the corporates.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the media is in the control of these corporates. And so therefore, all these three things are working hand in glove in these. Democracy is in serious danger. Democracy is being murdered every day in many countries. If you have read the report of The Economist, the research section on the situation of democracy in the world, every time the number of countries becoming less democratic is increasing.
Mm-hmm.
Democracy, human rights have become, these are only a kind of, they talk, but really it is not their concern. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
The nexus, I would call it a nexus between these three groups: politicians, corporates, media, and even the independent institutions of judiciary often become part of this. When they become more one on a particular group, they work together. Our defense, our rights and fights and all these things become secondary for them. And so if you stand on the way, we will eliminate you, because we have the police, we have the judiciary, we have the press, we have the politicians, money, everything is there. That's where this is increasing.
All colluding together.
Together.
Mm-hmm. Similar to what you have seen, Melvin, or what is your take? Why do you think such attacks are on the rise in the Philippines? Of course, the second, one of the biggest in one of the most affected countries, but also all over the world.
Yeah, I cannot really understand why this is now, although with the mantra of our president to kill, kill, kill. No, that's the way the state looks at the how they will resolve these problems, but they do not go into the root of the problem. Why are these people opposing the project, for example? If they will do comprehend the, for example, they are saying that the dam will be needed as an adaptation, climate adaptation, because in the future there will be, during dry months it will really be more dry, and during wet months it will be wetter, more precipitation. So they will have to build that dam. But there are other alternatives. They do not have to build that kind of very huge dams. No, they can produce smaller community impounding projects that will automatically provide services to the immediate environment, to the immediate communities that host those infrastructure. But their thinking is really huge, no, big projects, because as a father said, it would also give them huge profits. So after almost 4 decades of doing environmental work, these are still happening. I have been in this advocacy since in my 20s, no, and I am now nearing 60. So almost 40 years, but this is still what is now happening. Maybe we have also limitations in our education campaign, information campaign. But I don't know, because this is now a global phenomenon. So maybe what Father Xavier said is there are really confluence of forces that is now threatening the communities.
But as we both said, not to end on a more, not an uplifting note, but a more of a kind of a take action, kind of what can we do? The situation is terribly grim, of course, similar to the climate crisis. But as we said, a caged bird can still sing, and that people should take this information, and if they feel called to take action, to use it to motivate them, right? Rather than feeling the doom and gloom that is the case all over the world.
Let me end with a good positive note. In India, for example, there are more than 100,000 farmers are on the roads protesting against the laws that were against these small farmers, and they are there on the roads for now 4 months. They, with the children, women, youth, everybody is there. That gives hope for me. People are, even in winter in Delhi, it's very bad, and they are there trying to say that we stand for our rights. I think that's important. In spite of the governments going against them, they are there.
Powerful
They
testimony.
give us, they give me courage. They give me hope. The children give me hope. And whether it is a Greta Thunberg or in India, that is Disha Ravi, one young girl who was speaking about it, they are all arrested. But still they say that we will speak. That gives me hope.
Thank you, Father. I think that's the way to go. No, we have to persevere and really speak out to power. Because if we allow to be intimidated, then nothing will happen. We will just succumb to their to what they want. So we have to persevere and pray. We need unity. We need support. We need your help.
Very well said, Melvin and Father Xavier. Thank you both so much for
you.
joining this powerful Laudato Si dialogue and the plight of environmental defenders. And if people want to know more about the Laudato Si Lent or about environmental defenders, they can go to laudatosилent.org to join this journey of hope at laudatosилent.org. So thank you again, Father Xavier and Melvin. Melvin, it's late for you, so hopefully you can get some rest. And Father Xavier, thank you so much
Thank you.
for your expertise.
Thank you very much also.
Thank you. Thank you very much for organizing this. It's a good to share the concerns globally. Be connected. Thank you very much.
Salamat. Madamo ka salamat.
Thank you both.
Salamat.
And thank you everyone
Salamat,
who was watching as well and will watch later on YouTube. So thank you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Say good night.